Kash Patel walked into that hearing armed with confidence. But Jasmine Crockett came armed with receipts. By the end, he was shouting, slamming the table, unraveling. The room had been tense before she even spoke. Not from heat. Those marble-walled chambers in the Raven building stay cold, but from energy. Something about that Tuesday felt volatile, like the entire House Oversight Committee knew a fuse was about to burn out. Cameras rolled. Phones hovered quietly in the back, manned by aides pretending not to record. C-SPAN streamed it live. No commentary, just raw feed. Millions watched. Jasmine Crockett wasn't smiling. She leaned forward in her chair, elbows on the desk, eyes locked on Patel. Her voice sliced through the stillness, calm, clipped, clear. Mr. Patel, in your sworn testimony 2 weeks ago, you claimed no communication with personnel at Joint Base Andrews after the January security leak. Is that still your position today? Patel didn't flinch, yet. He nodded, adjusted his tie, and replied like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. That is correct, Congresswoman, but Crockett wasn't here for talking points. She calmly opened a folder, laid it flat. The mic caught the quiet thud of paper. Then how do you explain this email? Dated February 4th, sent directly to your government account, marked urgent. Refers to your call and your request to suppress specifics on troop readiness. He blinked, just once, reached for water, took a sip, set it down. Too hard. That email, yes or no, Mr. Patel? Do you recall any communication? The room held its breath. Someone off camera cleared their throat. Even the murmurs stopped. He wasn't ready for her to come in that fast. Congresswoman, he said, slower now. This committee has become a political circus. If you're going to accuse me of something, at least get your dates right. She didn't flinch. You're saying the document is fabricated? I'm saying you're twisting a routine conversation. She raised a hand, not to interrupt, just to draw a line. Then came the line. The one that would be clipped, quoted, and headlined by evening. Routine doesn't involve burying facts that affect national security. You're either being careless with your memory or calculated with the truth. And frankly, I'm not sure which is worse. It wasn't just what she said. It was how. Steady, composed, like she was walking him through a problem she'd already solved. Patel leaned back, then forward, tapped his fingers, jaw clenched, and then he cracked. You want to grandstand for your donors? You're not after truth. You're here for headlines. A ripple moved through the room. Crockett didn't blink. Chairman Rhodes banged the gavel. Mr. Patel, keep your comments in order. But Patel wasn't done. I've sat through this charade watching so-called representatives twist facts and insult me, and I've had enough. Enough is when facts are ignored, Crockett said, still locked in. Then came the breaking point. He slammed the table. You're not here for justice. You're here to smear. That moment, captured from 3 angles, looped across millions of screens, was pure combustion. His voice shaking with fury, her face calm, unmoved. That contrast said more than any transcript ever could. It was a flashpoint. But this story didn't begin there. And it won't end there. 3 weeks earlier, most Americans had never heard of Jasmine Crockett. In Dallas, sure. Texas's 30th district knew her. Blunt, prepared, civil rights attorney, sharp dresser, unflinching. But nationally, she was background noise on pundit panels. Patel, though, he was a fixture, a known quantity in national security circles. Former chief of staff at the Department of Defense under Trump. A regular on Fox, loyal, combative, comfortable under fire. He liked the hot seat. The storm started small. A leaked memo, a few screenshots, quiet buzz in journo circles, communications between Patel and unnamed military officials about softening internal reports on troop preparedness. Now, the fire was public, and Crockett had brought the match. At first, it looked routine, small, a stray email, maybe nothing. But then other documents surfaced, and suddenly a pattern emerged. Why was a former official interfering with post-administration military protocol? The House Oversight Committee moved quickly. A bipartisan vote summoned Kash Patel to testify. He agreed on his terms, but no one on his legal team flagged Jasmine Crockett as a threat. That was their first mistake. 3 days before the hearing, while D.C. slept through a mild weekend, Crockett stayed in her office, lights burning, papers everywhere. She combed through redacted communications, margins scribbled printouts, stacks of unindexed documents. No digital notes, no autosaves. "Don't give him room to pivot," she told her assistant, "and don't let them call this noise." Across town, in a quiet Georgetown townhouse, Patel prepped with longtime legal advisor, Surinewal. They rehearsed scenarios, built answers, fortified their line. They expected fire from Committee Chair Rhodes. Maybe a tough exchange with Salgado from California. They didn't expect Crockett to lead the charge. Back in Texas, progressive corners of Twitter started buzzing. Old clips resurfaced. Floor speeches, hearings, side-eye with substance. "Watch. Crockett. She's got receipts," one journalist tweeted. Still, few anticipated the blowout. What made Crockett dangerous wasn't just her facts, it was her restraint. No theatrics, no yelling, no monologue for the camera. She asked a question, waited for the answer, and if the answer didn't match the record, she pulled out the receipt, asked again, and again, and again. For Patel, it must have felt like walking across a frozen lake, one thin crack at a time, but signs of this collision had been visible if anyone was looking. 2 months earlier, a hallway run-in during a budget subcommittee meeting. Patel brushed past her. She asked if he still had clearance to discuss active military protocols. He laughed. "Rookie reps asking big boy questions," he'd said. She didn't laugh. Maybe she remembered. Maybe not. But the room remembered what happened when she pulled the email. It wasn't just the paper. It was the silence. Like everyone knew they were about to witness something real. It's tempting to believe these moments explode out of nowhere. Heat of the moment tension, made for TV drama. But they don't. They build through unreturned emails, through underestimated rookies, through weekends buried under paper piles, through arrogance dressed as experience. And when that pressure breaks, it doesn't ask permission. Still, before. Crockett dropped the email before Patel's voice cracked. Something shifted. A moment that didn't go viral, didn't get clipped, but changed the temperature in the room. 2 minutes before the outburst, she asked a question. Soft, surgical, a scalpel, not a hammer. "Mr. Patel," she said, "do you believe loyalty to a person should outweigh loyalty to the Constitution?" There was a pause, a long one. He leaned forward, hands clasped, measuring his words. "I believe service requires discretion and perspective, and sometimes the media misrepresents both." A non-answer. Crockett didn't blink. "Was that your perspective?" she followed, "when you advised against disclosing troop readiness reports to congressional briefers in late January?" Now, it wasn't about a document. It was about intent, where the line was, and who chose to cross it. Patel shifted, opened his mouth. She was already reaching for the next document. "Confidential brief summary, Department of Defense Communications, January 22nd, she read aloud. "Per K. Patel, hold back logistics update until post-inaugural directive. Is confirmed. Sensitive visibility. Limit distribution." She looked up. "That's your quote, correct?" He exhaled. "I'm not going to validate fragments leaked through anonymous sources." "So it's fabricated?" "I said I won't validate." She adjusted her tone, just slightly. "Then let me ask it differently. Did you or did you not instruct military personnel to delay logistical updates to congressional subcommittees? In January, he gave a short, tight laugh. That's a mischaracterization of procedural discretion. And just like that, the sentence hung in the air, the moment he lost the room. By the time the hearing was halfway through, procedural discretion was trending. Twitter had already clipped the quote. Crockett didn't flinch at Patel's dodge. She leaned in, her voice just a shade quieter. Do you think that kind of discretion would have been tolerated if your name wasn't Kash Patel? If you weren't protected by the right people at the right time? Patel's jaw tightened. That one landed. Chairman Rhodes cut in. The Congresswoman will keep her questions policy-based, not personal. Crockett lifted a hand in acknowledgement, but never looked away from Patel. He leaned forward now. You want to throw accusations without evidence? That's the real danger here. You're twisting leaks into some fantasy conspiracy. And you're denying them, she replied, without offering a single correction, not one counter-document. So tell us, if we're so wrong, Mr. Patel, where's your version of the truth? Silence. So quiet, you could hear someone shifting. In their seat 3 rows back. Then came the blow that would hang over the rest of the hearing. Because from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like you're here to clarify anything. It looks like you're here to protect someone. He opened his mouth, closed it, and just like that, the mask slipped. He sat back, lips tight, eyes sharp. It wasn't policy anymore. It was personal. And then the ticking began. Not a literal sound. Just that slow, rising heat under the surface. The kind that leads to raised voices and slamming fists. A veteran staffer later called it the cleanest unraveling they'd ever seen. She didn't stab him. She let him twist. That was Crockett's method. Ask. Wait. Ask again. No yelling. No insults. Just precision. Until his answers started doing the damage for her. But it wasn't the words that made it viral. It was the crack. Patel's right hand started tapping, a pen cap, nervously clicking against the wood. He wasn't hearing the questions anymore. Crockett laid out 3 printed pages. Internal correspondence, dated, stamped, stacked like evidence waiting for a verdict. Her tone didn't change. Mr. Patel, I'm giving you one more chance to clarify your role. Did you, or did you not, interfere with the chain of intelligence briefings meant for this committee? He didn't answer. He looked around. The chairman, then the press. Section behind the rail. His jaw clenched, his chest rose, and then it happened. Bang! He slammed his palm flat against the table. The mic picked it up like a gunshot. A few aides jumped. One flinched. This is outrageous, he exploded. You're twisting every damn sentence into a crime. This is a witch hunt. Plain and simple, Chairman Rhodes snapped forward. Mr. Patel, control yourself or I'll recess the hearing. But Patel didn't hear him. I've served this country with more integrity than half this committee. Combined! And I won't sit here while you insult me with your smirks and staged outrage. Crockett didn't blink. She closed the folder, sat back, silent, and somehow that made it worse. Patel jabbed a finger across the table. You wanted your viral clip? Congratulations, you got it. But don't pretend this is about national security. This is about scoring points. The room was still. His voice echoed off the cold walls. Rhodes hit the gavel. That's enough, Mr. Patel. But Patel kept going. You're letting her turn this into cable news. She's not asking questions. She's setting traps. And finally, Crockett spoke. Just 2 words. Still no answer. That was it. And it hit harder than anything else. Patel wasn't just yelling at her anymore. He was shouting at the weight of everything he couldn't explain. The documents, the cameras, the truths he couldn't dodge, somewhere near the media section. Someone whispered, "He's losing it." And he was, because what made it viral wasn't the volume, it was the contrast. Crockett, still, sharp, cold. Patel, red-faced, shaking, unraveling in front of the nation, No threats, no curses, just raw. The resentment in Patel's voice was thick, bitter, unfiltered. His aides shifted behind him, anxious. One leaned in to whisper. He waved them off. Chairman Rhodes banged the gavel. Twice. Brief recess. The feed cut out. Patel stood, yanked the mic off his collar. "This whole place is a joke," he muttered. He didn't know the mic was still hot, but cable news would catch it. On a loop. Within the hour. Online, it hit like a lit match to dry brush. TikTok got there first, stitched into parody skits, slow motion, breakdowns, duet reactions. YouTube followed with 10-minute body language analyses. On TV, talking heads debated if Patel had just torched any chance of a second-term appointment. But inside the room, as the committee recessed and the temperature dropped, the story was simpler. He cracked. Not because he was cornered with evidence, though some believed he was. Not out of fear of consequences, though maybe he should have. He cracked because the image he'd built, calm, smart, in control, was no longer his to steer. The outburst was the climax. What followed told the deeper story. The clip spread like oxygen finding fire. Reactions came fast, and they didn't all agree. In the chamber, staffers whispered and traded glances. Reporters typed like their lives depended on it, trying to beat the Wi-Fi bottleneck. Near the back, a young aide for a Midwestern congressman texted, "Patel just exploded." Out in the hallway, journalists packed in like it was a red carpet. A CNN correspondent went live, voice low. "We've just witnessed one of the most heated committee moments in recent memory." But the ignition happened on social. The original video, posted by an intern on Crockett's team, was raw. No captions, just "watch for yourself." No hashtags. No edits. Within 30 minutes, 400,000 views. By the hour mark, viral. Everywhere. Instagram influencers posted it with captions like, "How to handle a gaslighter in public." Twitter split down ideological fault lines. Some praised Crockett's restraint. "This is how you stay calm while a man unravels." Others called it tactical provocation. She baited him. Used silence like a scalpel. One viral tweet put it best. She never raised her voice. And still, he cracked. Conservative commentators scrambled to flip the frame. On Newsmax, a guest claimed he was ambushed, with doctored documents and nonstop interruptions. Frankly, he held it together longer than most would. But even Patel's defenders looked uneasy, because it wasn't about partisanship anymore. It was about optics. A man, unraveling in real time, against a woman, still and composed, never needing to raise her voice. Late-night comedy had a field day. The Daily Show opened with it. First time in history someone's gone from testifying to tantrum in under 5 minutes. Laughter. But not everyone was laughing. Back in Crockett's district, community centers held watch parties, not for drama, for her. They knew her. They'd seen her in courtrooms, holding chaos at bay. To them, this wasn't spectacle. It was personal. "She did what we always ask," one woman told a local radio host. "She came with the truth, stayed calm, didn't let him drag her down." Meanwhile, inside Patel's camp, damage control mode. By 6:15 p.m., his advisor Suri Nawal issued a clipped statement. "Mr. Patel stands by his testimony and will respond through proper legal channels to any misleading claims made during today's hearing." But it didn't matter. The clip had already done what statements couldn't. It wasn't just viral. It was symbolic. A political moment, a cultural flashpoint. For some, it was about gender. For others, accountability. But everyone was talking at airports, in DMs, on podcasts, in classrooms, group chats, cable roundtables. Across the aisle and across platforms, people weren't just replaying what was said. They were dissecting what it meant. Was this about unchecked power finally meeting consequence? Was it about weaponized silence, or just a bad day caught on tape? Whatever the answer, one thing was clear. The conversation had only just begun, and it wasn't fading anytime soon. But what most people never saw were the quiet moments after. The ones the cameras missed. The door closing, the silence settling. And in the realization on both sides that something bigger had just broken open. The live stream cut. The recess bell sounded. Most people watching online figured it was over. But inside room 2154, things didn't settle. They just got quieter. Not calmer, just quieter. Jasmine Crockett didn't move. While aides clustered around Chairman Rhodes, whispering about how long to delay reconvening, she stayed in her seat. Calm. Still. She opened the same folder she'd just used during testimony, flipped through its pages slowly, not reading, just breathing. Her staffer leaned down to say something. She raised one finger. Not now. Across the room, Kash Patel stood behind his chair, flanked by two lawyers. One of them paced in a tight circle, whispering with sharp edges. Agitated. The other, older and composed, handed Patel a bottle of water. "You need to stop reacting," he murmured. "Let this cool. You gave them exactly what they wanted." Patel didn't answer. His face had gone blank, expressionless, like someone had flipped the switch from fury to freeze. Down the hallway near the elevators, two junior congresswomen exchanged a glance. One raised an eyebrow. The other shrugged. They didn't say it, but they knew. That hearing had just rewritten next week's headlines, and maybe a few careers. Crockett finally stood. She didn't look at Patel. She passed her, notes to an aide, and walked straight down the corridor toward the committee lounge. A CBS reporter called out her name. She didn't break stride. Inside the lounge, she paused at the window that overlooked D Street SW. No sigh, no smile, just silence. Her aide spoke softly behind her. "Do you think they'll try to spin it like we bullied him?" Crockett turned, her voice even. "Let them try. The truth doesn't need noise, just daylight." Back in the chamber, Patel had recovered enough to meet briefly with Rhodes behind closed doors. No press, no transcript. Just two men, one trying to steady the institution, the other trying not to unravel further. Later, sources would call the conversation icy but professional. What was actually said remains a mystery. But a janitor working that hallway that afternoon would later tell a reporter, off the record, he looked like he saw something he couldn't unsee. Like he wished he hadn't walked in at all. In a side office, a young staffer for Representative Salgado sat frozen, watching the clip play on repeat. She paused it. Crockett, still and composed as Patel shouted, snapped a photo with her phone. Sent it to her cousin with a single line. This woman just shook the whole table. Back in the lounge, Crockett finally sat, unzipped her bag, pulled out a granola bar, half-eaten, forgotten lunch. She chewed it like a clock winding down. Not hungry, just steady. Her phone buzzed. Mom. "Hi, Ma." "Yes, I'm fine." Beat. I didn't yell. He did. That got a hint of a smile. Small. Honest. "I don't care what they say. I said what needed saying." Back in the chamber, Chairman Rhodes returned. "Hearing will resume in 30 minutes. Patel's team requested written clarification on questioning limits." Rhodes declined. Crockett said nothing. The hallway buzzed again. Cameras, chatter, questions in the air. But the moment, the real moment, had already passed. The one without mics, without lights. The one no one recorded. And maybe that's why it mattered more. Because while the hearing rolled on, the conversation outside was shifting, getting deeper, sharper. By morning, it wasn't just a clip. It was a mirror. People weren't reacting to just what happened between Crockett and Patel. They were reacting to what it revealed. Who gets heard? Who gets believed? Who pays a price when emotions boil in rooms built for control? Cable news split instantly. One side called Crockett's approach surgical, methodical, disciplined, a masterclass in calm confrontation. The other cast Patel as the victim, provoked, ambushed, disrespected. But the viewers at home? They saw something else. They saw a black woman hold her ground, while a powerful man tried to bulldoze her with volume. They saw grace beat aggression and the quiet cost of composure when someone else gets to lose control and still be defended. On social, the tone shifted. A podcast host posted, "Notice how calm Jasmine Crockett had to be, how perfect her tone had to stay." Meanwhile, Patel could shout, interrupt, slam his hand, and still folks debated if he was the victim. That's the imbalance, that's the point. Others began sharing their own stories. Teachers, lawyers, nurses, retail workers, women who had sat in rooms and been spoken over, called too aggressive just for disagreeing, expected to stay calm while someone else lost control. In a diner, just outside Tempe, Arizona, a group of women talked over breakfast. "She reminded me of that meeting," one said. "This guy blew up because I pointed out a mistake. He got to yell. I got called emotional." At a barbershop in Tulsa, two men argued about the same clip. "Crockett disrespected a decorated official," one said. "How?" the other shot back. "By not flinching when he got loud." The conversation had moved past politics. Now it was about power, about race, about gender, about what happens when someone who's not supposed to have the mic keeps it. One former congressional staffer tweeted, "What made that moment explosive wasn't what she said. It's that the old playbook didn't work. He pushed. She didn't step back." On Capitol Hill, the tension was real. Some members whispered privately that Crockett had gone too far, but no one said it on record because the footage didn't need spin. And Crockett? She didn't take a victory lap. No interviews, no celebratory press, just a quiet statement from her team. Congresswoman Crockett is committed to seeking truth and accountability in all hearings. Her focus remains on the facts. That silence? It wasn't retreat. It was control. Because while Patel's team worked to salvage his image, Crockett knew the moment had already been seared into public memory. Not because she shouted, but because she didn't. Her restraint was the message. It wasn't just that Patel lost his temper, it was that he expected rage to work. And when it didn't, he lost more than his cool. He lost the narrative. In a small-town library in Oregon, a women's leadership group gathered that night. Their discussion topic, composure as resistance. Crockett's clip opened the meeting. No one expected how loud the silence would become in the days that followed. By Friday, Patel's team was in full damage control. 2 interviews were booked, one with a friendly radio host in Phoenix, the other with a late-night pundit known for partisan fire. The strategy was clear. Shift the focus. Make it about procedure, not emotion. About partisanship, not power. The radio host began gently. "Mr. Patel, do you feel the committee treated you fairly?" His reply was smooth, rehearsed. "I've worked with congressional committees for years. This one felt different, hostile from the start, but I stand by everything I said." What he didn't grasp was that the public had moved on from what he said. They were replaying how he reacted, and how she didn't. Meanwhile, back on the Hill, something else was shifting. Lawmakers who had once stayed silent began issuing public statements, not about Patel, but about conduct, about professionalism. They didn't name names. They didn't have to. During a press gaggle, Chairman Rhodes was asked if disciplinary action was on the table. His response was measured. "This committee assumes our guests conduct themselves with respect and clarity. When that doesn't happen, we have procedures. We'll follow them." Patel's outburst had triggered more than headlines. It sparked a real debate about witness behavior, double standards, and what decorum really means, depending on who's holding the mic. Then came the think pieces. The Atlantic called Patel's explosion the product of a political culture conditioned to dodge accountability. Slate praised Crockett for weaponizing professionalism, describing her silence as a precision tool, not a default setting. The right pushed back. Cable opinion hosts labeled the hearing a public shaming, called Crockett calculated, rehearsed. She didn't answer. She went back to work. 2 days after the hearing, she was in her district, walking the aisles of a grocery store. No cameras, no entourage, stopping every few feet to shake hands. An older man patted her shoulder gently. "You kept it cool. That matters more than you think." She smiled, nodded. "Thank you for saying that." Elsewhere, Patel was being told to lay low. A leaked memo showed a soft rehab strategy, low-stakes podcasts, private think tank briefings, carefully worded op-eds, rebuilding trust. But it was no longer just about trust. It was about perception, and by then, the public had already made up its mind, because the truth didn't yell. It sat still and waited. This wasn't just about a hearing anymore. It was about legacy, because the clip wasn't going away. It was mutating. An indie musician looped the audio into a lo-fi track called Still No Answer. It hit 2 million streams on Spotify in 48 hours. A TikTok creator reenacted the exchange using puppets, 6 million views. Comments poured in, too real. That's exactly how it felt. Even high school debate teams picked it up. "Use the Crockett strategy," one coach told her team. "Stay calm. Let them bury themselves." It had become more than news. It was a cultural reference point. The fallout was bigger than Jasmine Crockett or Kash Patel. It had outgrown them. It became a mirror for how we respond when truth meets volume, and authority doesn't like how that tastes. But the most powerful reactions didn't come from anchors or influencers. They came from everyday people who saw themselves in that room. In living rooms, classrooms, barbershops, church basements, backyard cookouts. They weren't just watching it. They were dissecting it, holding it up, asking, "What does this say about us?" In Birmingham, Alabama, a Sunday school paused its lesson to talk about the clip. The teacher, a retired social worker, asked, "Why do you think he lost it?" One woman answered without blinking, "Because she didn't." In a community college in Flagstaff, Arizona, a political science professor assigned a one-page reflection, "Power Dynamics in Congressional Hearings." More than half the students wrote about Crockett and Patel. At a mechanic shop in Toledo, Ohio, the waiting room TV looped cable news. One customer turned to another and said, "I don't care who you vote for. If you can't answer a question without yelling, maybe you don't have an answer." The moment had taken root in the corners no headline ever reaches. Not because everyone agreed, but because everyone felt something: frustration, validation, curiosity, even hope. Some saw Crockett as a symbol of what's possible when someone prepared, unshaken, and unapologetic takes the mic. Others saw Patel as a case study of what happens when the old tactics stop working, when deflection meets documentation. One viral Facebook post from a middle school principal read, "I played the clip for my civics class, not because it was dramatic, but because it was instructional." They saw someone challenged by facts, and someone holding the line with patience. That's how change starts. It wasn't just online. A bookstore in Des Moines moved Crockett's essay collection to the front table. Sold out in 2 days. Patel's name trended on YouTube, mocked by some, defended by others, but always present. Even people who never watched the clip felt the ripple. A radio caller in Tallahassee said, "I didn't see the hearing, but my daughter showed me the video. She said, 'Dad, this is what you told me. Stay calm when they try to shake you.'" I didn't know she was listening, but I'm glad she was. These stories didn't make headlines, but they mattered, because in a country always debating civility, who gets to express anger, who's expected to swallow it? This moment laid it bare, and what made it powerful wasn't that Crockett won or Patel lost. It was that we recognized it. A job interview, a staff meeting, a parent-teacher conference, any room where someone tries to shout over the truth and expects to win just by being louder. People saw someone refuse to back down, not by shouting, but by not moving at all. That stuck. Long after headlines faded, that image remained. Because to understand why it resonated, you have to hear the quiet truth it left behind. It wasn't the first congressional clip to go viral. It won't be the last. But this one felt different. Because it didn't rely on drama or a clever one-liner. It was a slow, steady exposure of what happens when accountability confronts resistance and doesn't blink. In that room, Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't interrupt. She didn't even smirk. She did the hardest thing there is when someone's trying to throw you off balance. She stayed right where she was. We like to talk about courage as something loud, but more often, it's patience. It's asking the same. Question 5 different ways until the truth has nowhere left to hide. What Crockett showed wasn't just political skill. It was emotional clarity. She reminded people, especially women, especially black women, that you don't need to play by someone else's rules to be heard. You don't need to raise your voice to raise the bar. You just have to hold the line. And Patel? His reaction told a different story. One too many have seen. The story of what happens when someone used to control gets told no by someone they underestimated. This wasn't about party or platform. It was about behavior. Because what went viral wasn't just a moment. It was a pattern. A powerful man was asked a clear question. He dodged. He was asked again. He erupted. And the person asking didn't move. That moment played on phones, in classrooms, in people's heads, not because it was dramatic, but because it was familiar. You could see yourself there. You could imagine holding your ground, walking out with your dignity intact. There's a lesson there, not just for politicians, but for all of us. The truth doesn't always need a mic. Sometimes it just needs someone who refuses to be pushed off center. And when that happens, even silence speaks. So whether you saw yourself in Crockett, in Patel, or somewhere in between, this moment wasn't just about two people. It was about what we reward, what we tolerate, and who we believe when the room gets loud. So next time you're in a moment like that, at work, at school, at home, remember what it looked like when calm held the floor. Remember that clarity isn't chaos, it's control. And if this story made you pause, don't let it stop there. Talk about it. Ask the questions that usually go unasked. Hold people to their words. And when someone tries to shout over you, breathe and hold the line.